All right. What's good, everybody? Welcome to Unfair Sports, where we're talking OU football, college football, and sports in general. We are on a live show talking about the Baylor game coming up for OU, a little bit about the college football playoff rankings, as well as a little bit of recruiting updates. I've got one of my guests, my boy Preston, PG from the PG Show. PG, what's going on?
What's good? What's good?
Awesome. And we got one more joining us. We've got Kchris with the K from the Horns Down Podcast. All right, gentlemen, go ahead and let the people know where to find you. PG, start us off, and then Kchris, you go next.
Yeah, y'all can find me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts. Just the PG Show, all one word. You guys can find me on Twitter at the PG Show _. We got lots of good content and a couple really good interviews rolling out starting this Friday. So you guys need to jump on in.
Hey, you guys can find me at the Horns Down Pod on Twitter. Then you also can find me at Kchris with a K. You see it on the screen. Definitely follow us. We got a lot of great content. You can follow us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and of course YouTube. So definitely like, subscribe, share, give us some feedback, go from there.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, you know where to find us. You're right here on the channel. So thanks, guys, for pulling up. So, Kchris, you weren't jumping on when I opened up. What we're going to talk about here is, of course, OU Baylor coming up this weekend. We'll talk about the college football playoff rankings as well as a little bit about recruiting because we've got a lot of recruiting stuff going on. But I think we'll jump right into, as the comments are in, about meetings and stuff. Yep. Definitely going to talk about that. We'll jump in the comments too. So feel free to comment, converse with us back and forth on the show. We'll definitely toss you in so everybody can see what you're saying, and we will make the conversation go. So with that, let's jump right into more so the preview. OU Baylor this Saturday, 2:30 on, what's that? ESPN Plus.
ESPN Plus.
We got relegated to ESPN Plus, guys. Woo woo! We've done everything wrong to get ourselves put on ESPN Plus. I'm kidding, but no. With the new contract that the Big 12 had signed a couple years back, it added ESPN Plus to it, and now we will be there. And it actually said 2:00, so I'm actually off by 30 minutes. So let me edit that right now. So we'll start off with you, PG. How you feeling about this game coming up?
Yeah, I'm excited. OU gets a chance to get back at Baylor, who they lost to last year. It was their first loss of the season.
Yeah.
The thing is, last year you lost to a really physical Baylor team, and they're really physical again this year. You're running up against a Baylor team that is actually starting to catch its stride, so that's a little concerning. However, right now, they have the number one run defense in the Big 12, and you saw what we did to the number one run defense last week in the Big 12. So I have no doubt in my mind that Eric Gray will just have a day with the Baylor defense. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think OU is going to struggle too much in this. I don't think we're going to see the same thing that we saw from Marvin Mims last week. I believe Marvin Mims will catch his stride and get back into it. Eric Gray will potentially hit 1,000 yards after this game. He's at 796 right now. So
yeah,
I think he'll potentially get to that 1,000-yard mark, and he'll probably get 2 more touchdowns to make it 8 touchdowns on the season. I think OU's favored by 3.5 in this game.
I'm going to talk about the Vegas stuff in a minute. I'll talk about the spread and over-unders, but yeah, you are right. They're 3.5 right now.
Yeah, I really like OU in this game by 10.
Oh, wow. You're jumping out there. Kchris, what you feeling about this game coming up?
Give me 1 second, just sending this out real quick to my aunt, let him see everybody on here. First and
Good
foremost,
promo.
Thanks for the invite to the show. Look, a couple things come to mind with this matchup right here. Okay, I think what BV said at his press conference, there was something that really rang true and that really just hit home with me. This is going to have to be the most physical game that OU plays this year by far, right? Because Dave Aranda on the other side of the ball, he's going to call a great game defensively. And then offensively, they're not going to do anything spectacular. They're going to try to beat you in the trenches and try to really be the more physical team on offense as well, and just just overpower you. To be honest with you, they don't really have, in my opinion, a wide receiver that stretches the field like they've had in the past. They just get it done. They just nickel and dime it down the field, take the occasional shot when it's there, and they just play good, consistent football. Like I've always said about Baylor, they're either consistently bad or they're consistently good. It's no in between. Let's just be real.
No, and you're right. You're right there.
I think one of the things that pops out to me in this game to take a look at is PG and I talked about this last week about the previous matchup against Iowa State, right? Levy's creativity was off the roof in that game. But what you're wanting to see now is, does the creativity match the production that you'll see on the field? Hopefully Marvin Mims is not going to have an off day like he did last week. Hopefully we see some of these exotic sets and different things that Levy was wanting to do to keep Baylor on their toes and keep them guessing. Because when they're not able to just know exactly what you're doing or see something that looks familiar, look, the West Virginia game kind of told me a lot about this team as well. And, to your point, PG, they're catching their stride. I feel the same way about us as well. I finally feel a decent or good about this defense. Not great, but I feel somewhat good about this defense that we have. But like I said, it's for me on the offense is, can the creativity match the production? Are you going to be too creative, or are you going to go out there and just, take what they give you, which in a lot of ways, they don't play a 3-3-5, but Baylor is kind of has one of those defensive philosophies. Basically, hey, if you take what we give you, you'll do well. If not, if you try to get greedy, that's where we'll hurt you. And if you come out there and you're playing soft and you're not blocking like you're supposed to, we will take advantage of that. We'll exploit that. On the defensive side of the ball, I think what it really boils down to for this defense is, what type of shaping do you get that day? Is he going to be the shaping that they were all, geeked up about during the offseason, or is he going to be the one that we've seen thus far this season? I don't think that he really doesn't have a high or a low ceiling, in my opinion. I just think that he's just kind of middle of the line. To be honest with you, I think that him and Hunter Decker are kind of one and the same. He's just a tad bit better as far as being more accurate with his passes, right? So I don't think that they really do anything offensively that hurts you. They just scheme really well as far as their blocking with the run game. If you can shut down their run game and make this a passing expo, I think you'll be perfectly fine. But with that being said, I'll piggyback what PG said, and I'll say at least 10 plus. I feel really good. We're at home. We're feeling good about ourselves. It's time to kind of go out there and use this game as a statement game to let everybody know that, hey, we're here, we're going to be fine, and we're steadily changing that narrative.
Oh, yeah. I love that. And with everybody tuning in, go ahead and jump in the comments. We're going to get score predictions later on, but we'll take yours now. We'll add our exact scores later, but let us know. Jump in the comments. Hit the like button while you're here. Go ahead and subscribe. Also, if you're new to the channel, let us know what you think about this Baylor game. What scores do you have? Right now, PG and Kchris both have put a 10-pointer on them. So pretty excited about that. I can agree with that. I think the big thing, and we'll talk about X factors next in just a moment, but I want to start off with this, with my thoughts going into this game. Both teams are walking in at 5-3. So as Hank asked this question, dang, we got relegated to ESPN Plus. Yes, we did. We're both 5-3 this year. So unfortunately, at 5-3, with Baylor being 3-2 in conference and us being 2-3 in conference, it kind of does not look like it's going to be the juggernaut of a game that it was supposed to be when the preview came out at the beginning of the season. We're both trying to figure things out and make it happen. And so for me, I'm thinking that on the offensive side, yes, we've got to get our run game established. Baylor has the best run defense in the conference right now. They're actually better than Iowa State now. Surprise! It's because we ate up Iowa State. And so because of that, Baylor leapfrogged them for number one. And so in order to do something in this game, just like you all said, physicality will be critical. We're going to have to punch them in their throat and run it down their throat right afterwards and get all those yards and let Eric Gray hopefully push for that 1,000 yards. I kind of hope he gets 200 yards this game, because that would be dope for him to go ahead and get that 1,000 yards because of this one. but I don't see it coming, but I do see him having at least 100 yards this game because Eric Gray has been super efficient for this team this year. And then on the defensive side, we got to stop their running. And he's my X factor, and I'm going to go ahead and start that off for us now because I think that that's probably one of the best places to go to. The defensive X factors for OU, to me, it's definitely going to be those linebackers. Since we're still playing in that 3-3-5 defense, Richard Reese is no longer a secret. Dude's a monster. The running back for Baylor, he's a freshman, so we're going to be dealing with him for at least 2 more years. So we've got to be prepared to stop him. They have one of the best running game teams in the Big 12, and so we got to focus on him because just as Kchris, you mentioned, Blake Shapen is not someone that I'm afraid of. I was wondering how he got the job over Bohagan, but I guess something looked good in spring ball. I don't know because he does not look like he's that much of a threat.
I'll say this right here. I'll just jump in and I'll let you continue. I think Eichert and Lehman pointed out something, man. Grimes is a pretty damn good offensive coordinator. He's not flashy, not going to call anything super exotic. But if you look at some of the run schemes and some of the different things that he does during the game, the adjustments that he makes, he's a hell of a an offensive coordinator, at least against us from what I saw, especially last year. Because as the game went along, he just schemed different things and he saw different things, even from the sideline, not even up in the box. He just saw different things. He was like, oh, we could just run it. We could just flip this play and run it to the right. Oh, we can flip this play and run it to the left. Oh, we can circle this and come right back to this. It's going to work. It's going to be there. So, I mean, he's on the fly with the adjustments. So I could definitely see that. So, yeah, with Grimes, I think the success that they've had, you know, you thought that it would all be about Shapen and that he would elevate this team, but it's really just been about the scheming and the simplicity of the calls that Grimes has been able to make as an offensive coordinator, in my opinion. He's a former offensive lineman, sort of like Levy. So he sees the game from a different perspective, and he's able to actually bring those blocking schemes out there to give them time to do what they want to do.
Okay, I'm with that. And on that note, the linebackers to me are probably the most critical ones. As long as they're playing good ball, I think we'll be solid in this game. PG, what do you think is the X factor on the defensive side coming into this game against Baylor?
You said it. The linebackers need to play well. You want to see Agwebu, Stutzman, and Deshaun White just tackle really well this game. I mean, those are going to be the 3 main guys you see out there. I think probably, though, on the defensive side of the ball, you're going to have to get a couple turnovers. So OU has 9 interceptions this season and 2 fumble recoveries. You're going to have to make Baylor make mistakes. Only 11 turnovers this season. That is not, I don't feel like, winning on the defensive side of the ball. By this point in the season, I'd like to see OU with 15 or 16 turnovers. Right?
Yeah,
I feel like that's where they should be at. They're not there yet. We understand it's going to improve and get better, but this is the game where your defense has to make those plays and has to make the offense make those kind of mistakes because Baylor's not going to really beat themselves too much. And so you're going to have to go out there and make that happen. You did it against Iowa State. You can definitely do it here. We saw C.J. Colton a couple weeks ago get a great pick. You saw Danny Stutzman get one last week. We need to see those same kind of things happen this week.
Yeah, I need more Colton. I need more interceptions out of him. I mean, he got 2 before these 3 came up. He was the person that had the 2 before over 2 games. And so I kind of want to see a lot more CJ. Hopefully we do get to see him a lot. We did see a lot of Billy Bowman in that last game against Iowa State, which was really good. And it helps. And so as Hank mentioned here, all we heard about all week long was how good Iowa State's defense was. And then our defense stepped up and outplayed them. So I'm hoping that this week, all we're going to hear is how good Baylor's defense is and how disciplined they are. And hopefully we walk out there and we rock their mouth. So
Yeah, but I don't think you'll see a lot of that 3-3-5 that we've been running. Because if you noticed last week, they put out a 4-man front quite a bit, and I think they're
Yeah.
probably going to do the same thing. I don't know if you've noticed, but it appears Brent Venables might be calling a little bit more plays on the defensive side of the ball. He was a little bit more animated last week than what I've seen him this season. So I feel like he's out there calling the plays a little more.
Go ahead, Chris.
I kind of feel like that could be the situation. I think that he has more of an imprint than we thought. I mean, than we thought that he had. Everybody was thinking it was Roof or whatever the case may be, but I think he's being more vocal about it. I think he's starting to be more assertive with it. I think he's finally starting to get. He's not finally starting, but I think he's getting more of a rhythm with this head coaching switch and with how he's supposed to prepare the players, how he wants to go about it to get them in. Everything is going to click. It's just going to take some time. But what I would say as far as the X factor on defense, okay, talking to my uncle this morning, he brought up a really, really damn good point. What would mask a lot of the problems that we have on the back end, even with trying to bring Agwebu and I mean, Agwebu's played a lot of snaps, Stetson has played a lot of snaps, but at the same time, this is the first year they haven't really split or anything like that. They're actually taking the bulk of those reps, right? What masks that, and even the secondary, like woes, right? It's the defensive line. You got to get a pass rush. We're going to say this every single game from now on out until we see it consistently, at least for 3+ games. You got to have a consistent pass rush. And our pass rush this year has been almost non-existent. Look, we just got our first sack in 6 games. And it was from Jordan Kelly. And I'm not saying Jordan Kelly's a bad player, but I'm saying this. The play wasn't even called for him. He was a decoy. It was supposed to be for Ethan Downs, but he got loose, right, against Iowa State. So with that being said, I see the effort. I see the guys getting loose. They're just not able to finish. They're not able to finish. They're getting pushed up the field, just like we've heard countless people talk. We can go and listen to Layman and everybody else tell us talk about it as well. They're getting pushed up the field and they're not being able to get home and make that and get the sack. And that's kind of killing us on some situations. Go back to the Hunter Decker. We probably should have had him a couple of times. And at the end of the day, Agwebu probably should have got him if he wouldn't have overran the gap, right? But yeah, coming into this game, I think it's the defensive line. Can we get a pass rush on the edge and the interior somewhere? Can Jalen Redmond or Grimes, can they kind of come alive in this game and actually be a factor? And then also, if their running game is pretty darn good, which it seems like everybody is saying that that's their calling card for this team right here, you're looking at not only the defensive line, but you're also looking at the safeties as well. How are they going to be in run support? So if we get the Key Lawrence that we've seen these past 2 weeks where he's breaking boys off with some, you know what I'm saying, when they try to come up to the middle or whatever, or trying to find that hole when he's coming up.
Key's been stepping up over the last few games, man.
Yeah,
he like I had mentioned a while back, it looked like he was in the doghouse because if you watch the all 22, if you really pay attention to where he was positioned in a lot of games, he was looking like he was off. Like those 3 games we lost, he looked like he was off. He wasn't spots, missing the gaps and everything. Yeah. And then it's like it clicked, and now he's back to being the Key Lawrence that we thought. And then we had that Gentry showing at the beginning of the game against Iowa State, and that to me was big, and he looked like he knew what he was doing. So from jumping to some of these offensive side, to be for me, back to that offensive line, we need to maintain that consistency that we've seen at the first 3 games of the season, and then last 2, we need them to block. We need this run game to continue to be as dominant as it's been. We're a top 3 team in the conference with Baylor right behind us. Or need to be able to continue to put back to guards. And then when Dylan Gabriel a couple seconds to really think about and get to about 3 seconds in the play, he's finding receivers open because the design looking like that Farouk catch where he was wide open. Those play designs are starting to come in. It makes me think about the Josh Heupel stuff that he's doing at Tennessee right now. The players understand the plays so well to the point of, Jalen Hyatt's going to get the ball, and what does he do? Still end up butt naked open in the back of the field and behind the safeties. And it's just because of the confusion that comes from understanding how these plays are ran. Levy's offense, the players are starting to get it. They're starting to get open like crazy. I think that this line, if they can give Gabriel about 3.5 to 4 seconds on a consistent basis, he'll pick apart Baylor's defense. What do you think is the X factor, Chris?
I think it's kind of three-part. First off, I'll go with RB2. We kind of have an expectation for what we should be able to get from Gray. But RB2, when you come out there on the field, are you able to move the ball in the same, not in the same way that Eric Gray's been moving the ball, but are you able to pick up tough yards? Are you able to make it where it's 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5 consistently as well? Get what I'm saying? Is there a drop off whenever you come on the field? Secondly, I would say, hey, wide receivers. Wide receivers got to step up in this game, because here's the thing. This should not be a game where Baylor is just basically loading the box. They should respect your pass game as well. David Renda talked about it at his press conference, how Dillon Gabriel is the type of quarterback who can make a pass from one hash to the other if you let him, and we've seen Dillon Gabriel be able to connect on a lot of different passes like that, simply because that's kind of how, that's Levy's scheme, right? And then lastly, I would say, to be honest with you, my biggest X factor in this game, I said it before and I'll say it again, is the play calling. Levy doesn't have to be money on every call, but this is a team right here, and this is a game that you can't go in there and necessarily let's be finesse, right? I'm not saying that you got to line up in a wishbone and go right at them, but I do feel like a lot of the exotic stuff is not going to phase them. A lot of the trick stuff, I think that you're just going to have to, you're at some point, you're going to have to just play straight up, and you're going to have to say, we're better than you, and we're going to be more physical than you, and we're going to go at you, right? So if you see the hockey switch that they did on the offensive line during the Iowa State game, that's setting up for this week as well. Is Baylor going to be prepared for that, where then they can start running tempo, because you've already went over these 4 or 5 plays that you're going to run on this script, and you're saying, hey, look, this is all that you got to do. Don't worry about the calls or whatever. Just go and hit somebody, right? And so, that's something to also think about as well. But yeah, I would say RB2, wide receiver core, but most importantly is the play calling.
I'm here for it. PG, what you think is going to be an X factor on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, the biggest X factor is going to be the same X factor that we're going to have for the rest of the season, and it's offensive line keeping Dillon Gabriel healthy. Do not let Dillon Gabriel go out of this game, right? And that's going to be the same mantra for the rest of the season. But no, if we're looking at something specific, it's going to be trying to get Marvin Mims engaged early again on some of those deep passes. You've seen Jeff Lebby do that for the past couple of games, trying to get him engaged early. He needs to continue to do that. Marvin Mims and Dillon Gabriel will connect on those. You just have to keep doing it. The big thing is, during Venable's press conference, you heard him talk about how sometimes Jeff Lebby needs to go back and call a play that has already worked, right? Sometimes offensive coordinators have a tendency to want to call everything in their playbook, but they need to go back to the thing that originally worked, right? So I want to see Jeff Lebby do that. If there's something working, keep calling it until the defense figures it out and stops it, because there's no reason why you shouldn't be running it if the defense can't stop it. So I like Chris's point on RB2, especially if Javonte Barnes is not able to play in this game. I'm curious what we'll see out of Marcus Major, who is the third leading rusher, or if we'll see a little bit of Gavin Sawchuk, who we've heard so much about, but he's only had 2 rushing attempts the whole year. So really,
he's
offensive
played?
line.
I must have missed that.
Yeah, he's played twice. He has a total of 5 yards. So it's going to be offensive line, protect Dillon Gabriel, which, by the way, Dillon Gabriel, he's averaged 19 and 2020. He had 22 sacks both those seasons. Before last year when he got hurt, he only had 6. So this year he's only been sacked 11 times. So the offensive line's done a pretty good job so far. And
to be honest, when you say that about the sacks, I think honestly some of those sacks have been on Gabriel. That's been his fault, kind of holding the ball a little bit longer than he should, or not scrambling when he knows that he can outrun those players. Because dude is athletic as hell. He just doesn't use it much. He focuses too hard on trying to pass it when he should just go. He started running more. I think the funny thing is, as I say this, he started running the ball more after the concussion, which has made it even more terrifying for all of us. We're like, bro,
Brother got to learn how to slide. Brother got to learn how to slide.
He does not have a baseball slide.
I don't
He
know
did
if you
not play
saw
baseball.
that game. I don't know if you saw it play last week where he slid and the two Iowa State players pretty much collided with each other because he like had it just timed right. But I'm just like, yeah, I don't really want to see that. I want to see Dylan Gabriel, slide earlier and.
Mm-hmm. One thing I'll jump in here and say is this right here is that look, do I respect Dave Aranda? Hell yes, I do. Dave Aranda is a great defensive mind. I mean, obviously we know the LSU game. We can go and talk about that. And we could talk about what he did last year as well with Baylor. I mean, that defense was pretty much a bully. Hell, the last 2 years we played Baylor, that defense has been bullies, BV talked about that as well at his press conference about how we fared against them, at least on the scoreboard, the past 2 years. But with that being said, this Baylor defense has struggled an awful lot as well. I don't know what we're going to go up there and do next week in Morgantown, but I don't expect to give up 40 points to them, right? and yeah, I mean both, and even Dave Aranda said, he was like, "Look, I think this is a defense that's finally starting to find somewhat of an identity, and they're finally starting to hit their stride." And so you could say the same about us too. So,
that's true.
I mean, this defense isn't a world beater. I'm not saying that this is Georgia of last year's defense. But at the same time, we know that he's going to scheme extremely well. And when you watch their defense play, especially against us, for some odd reason, it's going to look like they know our plays.
Listen, Baylor didn't have a lot of turnover from last year on their defense. So we know what their defense is capable of. And that's the thing that scares me, is because I watched that game last year and I watched an explosive Oklahoma offense with Caleb Williams completely get shut down. And I'm afraid to see something similar. The difference is it's not Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch calling the plays. So maybe there's something to that. Dave Aranda maybe doesn't have Lincoln or Brent Venables' number. I don't know.
Well, I mean, here's the biggest difference, okay? The biggest difference comes between not the talent. So please don't get that misconstrued. Not the talent level between Caleb and DG. Look, I love me some DG, but hey,
Caleb's Caleb. You can't. Yeah, you can't deny that.
But when you talk about right here, as far, I mean, and he could see the field now. You're seeing the progression that he's making even as a true sophomore in Caleb Williams.
Yep.
But when Dylan Gabriel has time, and when Dylan Gabriel is filling out that pocket, you see the pass that he threw to the touchdown pass that he threw to Jalil Farouk in the Iowa State game.
Yep.
If that's the Dylan Gabriel that we see going forward, it's going to be scary for a lot of defenses, not only to finish out this year, but going into next year as well. Because if we get that Dylan Gabriel, it's gonna be lights out.
Yeah,
I 100% agree with you there.
I'll say this.
Go ahead, PG.
If Lincoln Riley was in this game, if Lincoln Riley was coaching this game for Oklahoma, I would pick OU by 40 in this game, especially after what happened last year. Or I'd say Lincoln Riley would take a timeout with 1 second left in the game just to kick the field goal like he did last year.
Being petty.
Yeah,
being petty. To be honest, the only reason why I would agree with you there is just because you wouldn't have as much player turnover. So that's kind of the difference between this regime and the old regime. And that's why I don't compare the two as much. And I say this a lot. It's really because of major turnover of players. And people kind of bashed me a little bit when I agreed with Stuart Mandel over at The Athletic when he talked about how Oklahoma was going to finish. I agreed with him for the most part because he outlined it. You're losing a lot of players, and it kept losing players from the last regime. People graduate, going pro, etc. And it's a lot of stuff to replace. And then you're bringing in a new scheme, a new setup. It makes sense for us to be doubted 100%. And we 2-3 losses. But with that being said, like you said, Chris, this team is humming. EG looks like he's focused. We talked about this the last live stream last week when I mentioned about the future and talked about Tennessee. This really feels like what they were doing. Dylan Gabriel starting to get the offense. He's getting it down. and the receivers are understanding where they need to be to get open, and they're just following suit. Everything is doing it the way you want them to. All they got to do is add their defensive players to make the defense a little better. Not a lot better, just a little bit better. Then the offense needs to be explosive and blow up. Honestly, I'm thinking DG's probably going to be back next year because he'll know the offense inside. Might be a good thing. And hopefully we end up number one like Tennessee is. And speaking of which, thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate y'all jumping on the live stream. Jump in the comments. Let us know about what you think about this game. Tell us, do you think that the Oklahoma's going to win by more than 10? They're going to win by less than 10. Give us your predictions and score predictions. We're going to go around the horn here for the exact same thing. Then we're going to jump into the next topic. So, PG, give me your score prediction.
I think it's 31 to... You know what? I'm going to go 31-14.
It's not too shabby.
And you know what? If Venables has any sense of non-cowardliness in his bones, I want him to kick a field goal with 1 second left.
Don't do it. Just don't be petty. No reason to. No reason to be petty. Chris, what you got?
I'll go. I'll say 34. I'll say 34-21.
Ooh, 34-21. Okay. Interesting. I see Hank's got here 40-24, the good guys. I love the way that you place the good guys. And so before I give mine, we'll go to the numbers that our friends at Vegas have. The spread is right now at 3.5. Oklahoma is the favorite at the crib. Over under is set at 61. So they do expect this game to be a shootout because it's gone up to 2 points since the actual opening. All the money is on Baylor, and the line has not moved. 85% of the money's on Baylor. 73% of the tickets are on Baylor. Most of the picks from the experts say go Oklahoma. Of course, I'm going to Oklahoma. I think they win this bad boy by about 20 points. So I'm right there at about the 42 to 22 or 21 point range. I'm thinking it's going to be a high-scoring game on the good guy side because I don't think that Shapen's going to do any better than Decker did against us last week. Now, he's a little mobile, but I think the linebackers would be better prepared this week. All right, you guys, you drop your comments. Let me know your scores as well. We will leverage them a little later. And with that, let's jump right here into the college football playoffs. New top 25. PG, I know that you were pretty probably worked up about seeing all of this. I'm going to go ahead and post it up here so everybody can actually see it. Let me pull it up.
The rankings are trash.
All right. This is what our rankings are looking like, everybody. And PG, we'll start with you because I know you're the most worked up about this. How you feel about these rankings?
Yeah, these rankings are poo-poo. I mean... I kind of agree. Like Tennessee, like I can see the argument for Tennessee being number one, and I put them in number one in mine. But I definitely think Ohio State's the best team in the country. Like I think they're the most complete team in the country. I think they're probably going to go win the national championship at 15-0 this year. The Clemson thing, it makes no sense to me. I would put them at 5 looking in. I don't even think Bama should be in the conversation right now because there's 6 undefeated teams. And so I actually have so I put out mine, said the committee got it wrong. I have Tennessee at 1, Ohio State at 2, Georgia at 3, TCU at 4, Michigan at 5, Clemson at 6. So and the reason why I had Michigan in my Final Four at the beginning of the year, I don't have Michigan in there now just because after watching Ohio State the past couple of weeks, I just think now Ohio State is the better team. They look more complete. Even though I think that game might be close and it probably could swing any other way, I think Ohio State comes out victorious on that one. So I have Michigan looking on the outside in. I think Clemson still has a good shot to go undefeated this year. But I think if your 4 teams are Tennessee, Ohio State, TCU, and Georgia just has that loss to Tennessee, I think probably those are your 4 teams to get into the playoffs. I don't think the committee leaves out a 1-loss Georgia team that lost to the number 1 team in the country. So,
okay, Chris, I'll let you jump in first. I have a lot of comments on that, but Chris, what was your first impression when you saw it last night?
I'll make mine brief. I just looked at it. I think the only thing that kind of made me go like, oh, wow, was Tennessee at 1 and Georgia at 3. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. It's probably going to be the short-lived number one seeding ever. Because I don't see them going to Athens this weekend and winning that game. I think that, to be quite frank with you, we all know that Bob at Alabama is not that guy. He's not giving them any help. I think that if he would have gave them some help, and Pete Golden as well, I think that if he would have gave some help too, that Bama will probably be sitting here number 3 or number 1 or whatever the case may be. I think it's funny because the way it's set up is this right here. In my opinion, Tennessee probably still makes the college football playoffs as at least a 3 or 4 seed, in my opinion. Why? Because they're going to they beat Bama, and Bama is most likely going to go undefeated for the rest of the year. And then they're going to play Georgia in the SEC championship game. And if they lose to Georgia, and let's say they play them close, do you put a 2-loss Alabama team in or a 1-loss Tennessee that beat Alabama, right? So obviously that's going to matter. But the problem is that Tennessee didn't even play in the SEC championship game, but Alabama didn't win it, right? So I see that as just something that kind of popped out to me. Obviously, I think they said it last night. The committee shows you what they initially think of TCU and the rest of the Big 12, how it is. Look, if it was OU or Texas, yes, OU or Texas would be number 6 right now, or elite, or number 5, whatever the case may be. I'm sorry, PG, but I have to disagree with you on Ohio State. Ohio State has had the benefit of, just like Michigan, they played at home almost every freaking game this year. And the Big Ten is really weak this year, to be quite frank with you. Penn State's a good team, but they're pretty sporadic on offense. They can't put together consistent drives to score. You saw all the funky ways that they were able to score against. They had to score against Ohio State. I think that Ohio State should beat Michigan handedly. But again, Michigan and Ohio State are benefiting from playing a weak Big Ten schedule. We'll see what Illinois has to say about Michigan and Ohio State here in the coming weeks. But other than that, I think it really shapes out to what it's supposed to be. I think it's funny that Texas is at number 24 right now.
I was going to point that out too.
Yeah. Hey, they're setting Texas up. They're setting Texas up to be in the Final Four.
Well, I'll say this as well. Okay, and then I'll pass it off to you, Jay. Oh my gosh, OU and Texas have the same record right now. So I want all of the Sark boys and all the Sark lovers out there to realize y'all are 10-10 through 2 years of his regime. So y'all can sit there and say, "Oh, we told y'all, OU fans, we told y'all this, we told y'all that." I just want y'all to understand we got the same record. And the way I'm feeling now, we might probably going to be 6-3 coming out of after Saturday, and y'all are going to be 5-4. So I just want to leave y'all with a little something to think about.
Kchris, there's a chance Texas loses 4 straight games here.
Well, yeah, their schedule coming up is brutal. They've got Kansas State coming up in Manhattan. Then they got TCU right afterwards at home.
And then they got to go to Baylor, Kansas.
Go to Kansas, and then they got Baylor. So they've got a tough road ahead of them. And so, so that was the first thing that jumped out to me was Texas being ranked 24th.
Yeah, and can I say this before you go real quick, Jay?
Go ahead.
Kchris, I agree that if Oklahoma was undefeated in TCU's position, they'd probably be 6.
Yeah.
But if Texas was undefeated right now, they'd be number 1. No doubt in my mind.
They give them 2.
Because the media is so high on Texas, and I'm not going to say what I was really thinking because, we're not going to say it, but they're so high on Texas that if they were ever undefeated, same thing for USC, they'd be number 1. Easy. Without a shadow of doubt. No matter how close the games were.
So with that, okay, first off, I agree with you, Kchris. And I was actually going to say to PG about this, about the Ohio State. Now, I think Ohio State is 2. I think that they're at the right spot mainly because they're just beating the dog out of everybody that they play. They're blowing everybody out, except for Notre Dame in the first week of the season, which makes sense because that was Notre Dame's Super Bowl. They were prepared heavily for that game, and they showed that they weren't as prepared for any other game moving forward. They cared about Ohio State. Outside of that, they've just demolished everybody in front of them. But they only played 2 road games, and they've got 2 more coming up over the next 4 weeks. So they're going to be battle tested at that point where they actually have to leave the crib. But they have played all home games. Same thing with Michigan. They've only had 2 road games, and they were against mediocre teams. Their big road game for Michigan is against Ohio State. So Michigan will be undefeated going against Ohio State. Ohio State will be undefeated when they face them because neither one of them got to see Purdue, the team that's known for just knocking them all off, which is always hilarious that they're the team that does it. Thing with the opportunity this year, because of the way that their divisions are set up, the scheduling, they can't play everybody because they have too many teams. So that's the one thing on that one. Next up, I understand TCU at 7. I think TCU is a really good team. I think that the Big 12 is one of the stronger conferences in college football right now. Yeah. The problem is that we're just cannibalizing each other. And there's nothing about TCU that looks fancy. They're just out there winning games. And as long as they stay consistent with that and do it past the Big 12 championship, I think that they leap over a Clemson or a one-loss SEC team to go into the playoffs, just because I think they'll allow them to muscle their way in if they remain undefeated. Because right now, the way the SEC is going, Chris, you think that this is going to be a short-lived number 1. I don't think Tennessee loses to Georgia this weekend. And that's outside of me just being a biased fan of theirs. It's also because they really do have shades of the 2019 LSU team. Statistically,
Tennessee's
across the board,
they
look
Tennessee's
just like them.
Yeah.
And let me explain
Tennessee
why.
is
Let me
that
explain
good.
why, Chris. Let me explain why. Because I know what you're going to say. Everybody said this. So you're trying to say they have Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and all that. No. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying the way that they're scheming right now, they're scheming like they have those players.
I'm not going to say anything about Jamar Chase. What I'm going to say is this right here. Go back to the video that we did with Ty.
Yeah.
And you'll hear exactly what I said. I said, hey, Ty, it's like they ran the same freaking play for Hyatt 3 different ways.
Every week? Yeah.
They ran the same play. I was like, it looks like Lincoln Riley's, if you go back to, it's a bunch of games that he has it. You look at the Texas game when they won the Big 12 championship, that game. If you go back to a couple of times in that game. But if you go specifically, they set it up to where, who was it? It was Calcaterra. Calcaterra was basically, it looked like they were about to run a screen. Boom, he gone. They get a holding call. He still catches the pass for a touchdown. Collar throws it. And I'm just like, oh, I love it. I love it, right? Same setup. I was like, this is the same formation they keep running. Now, here's the difference, okay? Here's the difference. It's crazy to say this, but Georgia may have a better secondary this year. Usually we think of Alabama, and the first thing we think about is their secondary. But they're more front-heavy than they are secondary. Their secondary has not been great this year, okay?
At all.
That's going to be a problem for this Tennessee team, is that secondary for Georgia is going to be sitting there saying, we love it. And they're also going to be able to play mess with the time of possession as well, because you have not only do you have a plethora of running backs back there, but you also have Bowers, you have Washington, you have the other tight ends. I mean, you have a plethora of talent to be able to get physical with them and actually turn this into a battle for time of possession. And if you're able to keep that offense off the field, I'm just saying, I'm not saying that this offense is not explosive, that this Tennessee offense is not playing great football. But my whole thing is how loose do we think Hyatt is going to get? Do we think that he's going to have another game where he's going to have 6 touchdowns? Because that's what it's going to take to beat this Georgia team. It took Tennessee the game of their freaking lives to beat Alabama.
Yeah, in 14 seconds.
By like 2 points.
Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes is Steve type stuff.
That's what I'm saying.
And guess what? And I'm gonna say this with that. I agree with you. Everything you said is very much valid. But that's the problem that other teams are having against Tennessee. They can't stop those plays. And they're not going to be able to this year. This year, the way that they're running it, as efficient as they are, having a year in hypo system, that's what I was saying about Oklahoma as well. Having a year into that complex passing system to where the receivers understand, oh, so that's how I'm supposed to run my route to confuse the defense and get wide open. Everybody's had film on Tennessee. Like this is the same offense they ran last year. Exact same. But guess what? Those receivers figured out how to run their routes properly, and they're getting wide open every single. Jalen Hyatt's open. He was open against Kentucky, and Kentucky has a good secondary. And he was torching them because
I'll say this. You said that
everybody
that
hates
Tennessee
Kentucky.
had the game of their life and that they're going to have it again. I can make the argument that LSU had to have the game of their life multiple times in 2019.
Oh, the entire season they did. They had to.
Yeah.
But they were firing on so many cylinders. It was perfect.
So
one player has a bad game.
So is that what you wanted to do? So you're wanting to compare this Tennessee team.
Go look at the numbers.
They are statistically better than that 2019.
They are in par in a lot of ways.
When Tennessee get their ass handed to them,
okay.
I'm gonna look at both of y'all and say, "Shut up!
Hey,
don't talk anymore. Go sit over there in the corner.
You know what?
It's okay."
All right.
Hey, you know what? Let's
let me wrap it up.
405 Burger Bar bet on this one. I'll bet you that Tennessee beats Georgia and doesn't lose another game until national championship.
Put it in the group chat. Put it in the group chat. It ain't a contract if we ain't got it in a group chat. Go ahead.
I'm all for it. All right, I'm gonna wrap this bad boy up. I got one last thing to really say about the way the Big 12 teams are being treated here in the polls, and then we're gonna move on into recruiting updates before we bounce out. TCU's about where they should be. Like I said, they just got to show that they are who they say they are, and they've got a pretty solid schedule coming ahead. And once they beat up on Texas, I think that's when the respect will come. They got to beat up on Texas. That's going to be critical for them. Kansas State, and Oklahoma State are about where I thought they would be. I think Oklahoma State, rumor has it, they lost their quarterback. We'll see if that's truly true or not. But Kansas State is playing pretty solid as well. They need to beat Texas this weekend so they can prove themselves also. It's like Texas is the measuring stick that the national media is using or whatnot because of how much talent they have on the roster. That's honestly what it is. It's all about how they always have the best. Between them and Oklahoma have the best recruiting classes. So eventually it's got to come together, right? Talent has to overcome bad coaching, and it just doesn't seem like it's going to work that way for them this year again. But that's why the media looks at them like that. But Texas being ranked, that's all it is. Their recruiting classes, and at some point, their Texas has to be the talent has to win it at some point. So in conclusion, Big 12 just got to keep proving itself as usual. Outside of the top four, to be honest, if there's anything I'd probably switch, I would have switched Clemson with Michigan and let Michigan be in the top four and just made it SEC versus the Big Ten for right now because neither one of those three teams are going to lose. So let's jump out on that, and we're going to go into the final thing. We're going to talk recruiting. And I know that we've been hearing a lot of rumbles out there. There's a lot of people that are upset. I understand. Sooner fans, you're mad. I get it that we didn't win Caden McDonald. And a lot of Sooner, especially Sooner Twitter, was going in on our boy Ty Bates and questioning him as a recruiter. And it's been proven. Recruits like him. He's been doing a good job for years. And they know that a lot of the players have followed him, want to follow him from Clemson, couldn't. Mainly because Venables said, hey, you made loyalty to Dabo. I want you to stay here with them. You need to come here because it was a lot of notes written and articles written about how there were Clemson players that wanted to leave and come with Venables and squad to Oklahoma. So besides that, we've got some players that looks like they have made up for the loss of our boy McDonald. Caden decided to pick up Ohio State instead of Oklahoma, and I totally understand. But I saw a kid. Did you guys check out Ashton Sanders?
Oh, yes. He's going to be tremendous.
Yeah, I was looking him up. Did you look him up? Did you see him, Kchris?
I haven't seen him yet. What's good on him?
All right. PG, you want to give some vitals? Or you want me to go ahead and pop it? I'm going to pop up a picture of him in just a second. But
Yeah. I mean, do you want me to talk about who I think OU is going to land in this class, like to finish it off, or do you want me to talk about him specifically?
Yeah, jump in him first. Let's jump into him. Marcus Strong, and then talk about some of the players you think we're going to land.
Yeah,
because there's of course one comment here that we're definitely going to jump into is I just lost it on accident at the beginning. There it is. our boy Hicks, which we've talked about. Hicks coming to visit the Oklahoma State game. That game is going to have a lot of defensive linemen.
It's going to have a lot of players. It's going to have a lot of players. 2024, 2025. You're going to have Hicks is on the official visit. Jackson Arnold is going to be there this week. PJ Adebore and Jackson Arnold will be there during the Oklahoma State game. Colton Vasek is supposed to be here this week. If that visit doesn't happen this week because of the weather and everything, which could potentially play a factor, you'll see Colton Vasek potentially take that visit during Oklahoma State. So as far as Ashton Sanders goes, he is a 6'3", 295-pound defensive lineman. He was committed to UCLA. He decommitted earlier.
Cal. It was Cal.
Oh, it was Cal?
It was Cal.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. He was committed somewhere. He decommitted. Right now, he's still got quite a few crystal balls in there for Wisconsin and Cal. He's got a lot of other offers. Oklahoma coming in, I kind of feel pretty strong about this one because when I look up and down the roster, you see Utah, Washington, Notre Dame. I mean, outside of Notre Dame and UCLA, we're probably his best offer. And quite honestly, for a guy of his stature and his talent, I mean, if you guys saw just how big he was, why would he not want to come play for a Todd Bates?
Yeah, that's how big he is right there. That's a picture of the kid right there at the All-American training. He's a big boy.
Yeah, one of the things I've pointed out today in a video, specifically talking about this Todd Bates and Brent Venables questioning about, hey, are these guys the right guys for OU in this program, is they're very good at taking guys like Ashton and turning them into really good players.
4 to 5, low 5 stars. Yes.
It's not necessarily all about your star ranking come out of high school, because Venables and Todd Bates are very good at narrowing down and finding that, what you talked about earlier, Jay, the hidden gem, the diamond in the rough. And that's exactly what Ashton Sanders reminds me of. He's in the backwoods of Los Angeles, California, right there in USC's backyard. And this is a guy that USC is going to overlook every single time. But this is a guy that is going to be able to come in and make an immediate impact on the field in a rotation scheme. So I definitely like this offer. I think this is one that Oklahoma gets. I don't think it's going to be too hard of a battle for Todd Bates on this one. And, ultimately, these are the kind of battles that Oklahoma is going to have to get into after you lose a guy like Caden McDonald. We talked about it earlier. You're going to throw out offers and you're going to lose them. You're going to lose some of these battles. And, when it happens, sometimes you got to revert here. The other thing to note is they're going to hit the transfer portal and they're going to get some tenured defensive linemen. I'm not really worried about it. Now, next year, if they lose out on like Zadavian Sims and David Stone and T.A. Cunningham, if they lose out on all of those guys and they don't land any of them, then I'm going to start being concerned about Todd Bates. But I'm not concerned about it right now. Too early to get concerned about it.
2 to 3 years. He has to go 2 to 3 years without bringing in honestly the big name that everybody wants him to before you're upset about it. Kid like this, I mean, PG said it perfectly. BV spoke about it at his press conference. If you guys heard that, he said, "Hey, he's like, if you miss on a kid or whatever the case may be, say that's one of the problems with recruiting is that everybody's so quick to move on to the 24 and 25 class that you forget about some of these hidden gems out there." And Isaiah Simmons, Kevon Henry, they was naming off there. He even at Clemson, he even talked about Mark Clayton here, right? So a lot of people forget, and I don't want to sound like a Texas fan taking credit for all the Alabama success, but when you look at what he was able to do, one point, I can't wait to talk to my boy Nick. Shout out to Nick, Nino's Corner. Nick always talks about, he had that defense play behind a transcendent quarterback. But you also got to think at some point, man, damn, his defensive linemen were all first rounders, near at least. And you're like, and some of those kids were 3 stars and low 4 stars, basically mixed in with like 1 or 2 5 stars. And sometimes the 3 stars were the one who were outshining the 5-star players. So when you look at that, you're like, hey, you got to trust the process. You got to just relax. I say it every time. Got to relax and let these guys have some leg room. They've been here for about 8 to 10 months. They've shown you flashes of what they can do. Give them a full summer. Give them a full give them this season right here is basically the mulligan, and let them boys loose. They're going to be perfectly fine. But getting a kid like this right here, and to be honest with you, looking at his size, he doesn't fit Grinch's system at this point in time.
No. He fits perfectly into what we're trying to do. Like right here on 3, they had him at about 6'1", 24/7, and I think Rivals had him about 6'2", 6'3", respectfully. But they're all in around 300 range. That's what you need at nose tackle for what we're doing at 335. You got to have a big dude to fill the gap, fill the middle, and force them to have to double team on a regular basis. And I think that he's one of those players that can do that. And so I'm excited. Ashton he got the offer on the 30th, and he's already said today that he will be at Bedlam as well. David Hicks will be at Bedlam also. There's another defensive lineman I'm expecting to be there as well. And this is our no stars guy, Marcus Strong. Now, I did some digging on him or whatnot. Marcus Strong, he's out of Lake Butler, Florida. And he's one of those quiet players that just didn't go to camps. He didn't go to the summer camps. He didn't go to those workouts, All-American games. He didn't do anything like that. But he had 0 FBS offers at the beginning of October. He has 16 through the month coming up here at the beginning of November. Everybody has caught on to him late in the season. And when I watched his film, so he has a relationship with Bates. They talked when he was at Clemson and when he was younger. And when I watched his film and watched him play, the dude has some strong hands. So roughly 6'5", 270, 280. He grabs players and he holds on tight. Like he doesn't. It's like a toddler holding a piece of candy or a piece of food and you trying to pry it out their hands and you can't. That's how he was on the defensive side. And then the game came and finished the tackle if he didn't finish it himself. And so these are the type of players you're going to see. He has no stars now because, like I said, he doesn't really go places much. And they said that he's a quiet dude, but I expect that number to jump up, probably be a 3-star, maybe a low 4 once people actually start evaluating and paying attention to him. Because you got to remember, there's hundreds of thousands of high school football players, and not all of them get paid attention to unless they're ones that can, financially go to these All-American games or, somebody takes an interest in them and tries to help prop them up. But because he has a relationship with Bates, I can see him also pulling up for Bedlam. And like PG mentioned, we've had a ton of kids coming through for that. So be excited on that front.
I will say this. Do you know who last year, and you'll get where I'm going with this. Do you know who last year, who signed in the 2022 class, and at this time last year was not ranked when he received an OU offer?
Who?
Robert Spears Jennings.
Sure wasn't.
He had the highest rise ever in the 247 sports rankings. And here's my thing, and I pointed this out in my video earlier. Sometimes getting these guys that are really low in the rankings sometimes are better than 5 stars. Here's the reason why. And the reason why I love Derek LeBlanc so much. 1, he's a leader, right? So sometimes these lower tier guys understand to make a name for themselves, they have to be a leader. 2, they're a little bit more teachable. Sometimes these 5-star guys get it in their head that they're going to the NFL, right? Because that's what they're told. They know they have talent. And so they're sometimes a little bit harder to teach. They're a little bit more rambunctious. They do whatever they want. These, guys that are not ranked and the 3-star guys, they kind of know that they have to work for it. And so they're teachable. They're usually doing what they're supposed to. They don't go out and get in trouble a whole lot. And so that's why I say sometimes these 3-star guys are better than the 5-star guys.
My whole thing. Now, that's great, but at the same time, you still want that talent. You want to go out there and get the best talent, but you're trying to go out there and get pieces that fit your system. Look, one of the things that's missing from this defense right now, okay, is something that we all talked about coming into the season. Where are those freaky guys out there, right? Where are those freakishly athletic guys out there, right? So you got a Billy Bowman, who arguably was probably, if not one of the best players, if not the best player, then one of the best players early on in the season prior to injury, right? And he's able to kind of do some of those things that you want in that Venable system. A guy like Marcus Stripling, that's a guy that you thought would be able to kind of be that freak on the defensive line and be able to just do some freakishly athletic things. Hasn't really panned out. He's been injured a lot this year. Obviously, we know that Kanik has a high ceiling, but can he put it together to actually play that cheetah role to move over there, like a Jaden Rowe as well, as big as he is, but as fast as he is as well. Those are kind of some of the things that you're missing from this defense right now, because now you see Venables basically going back to basics, 4-man, 4 down linemen, right? And he's basically just saying, let's just play basic football. Let's get through the season. Then we'll start implementing more, because there's so much more that this defense could be doing. But it's just the fact he doesn't have those guys out there. But at the same time, you're looking at Bates or whatnot. I know a lot of OU fans have been kind of down in the dumps about him, but you're like, man, not only are we going to, in my opinion, I think that we land David Hicks. I really do, because all the turmoil, all the crazy stuff that's going on, I think we land him. I think we land some other kids. But I also think that you go to the portal and you take a few kids. And guess what? What about those kids at Clemson that came there to play for those two anyways, and it hasn't either panned out or they're just looking for a change of scenery right now, right? I think PG and I talked about there was like an All-American DB up there that's not playing all that much right now. You never know who's going to go into the portal and who's going to be looking for a new scene and who else to come and play. Who else is better to come and play for than BV and guys, right? So
no, you're right.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you 100%. That's kind of the thing I was thinking about, is that we'll see a lot of transfer portal movement coming this fall, especially once the season is just about over. You're going to see a lot of movement there. You're going to see a lot of movement with recruits, because National Signing Day, the early sign day is December, and then actual sign day is February. Between those two times, getting to December and then getting to February, there's going to be a lot of movement. It's not something that we can say that everybody's going to stay where they are. Things are going to change. And so we've got someone that asked a question. Lester asked this: when does OU start dropping money bags? Now, what makes you think we're not? What makes you think we aren't? Like, that's the thing about it, is our assumption is because we're not there seeing everything. There's a really good chance that we are dropping bags of money to people right now. It's just we're not winning the bid in some capacity. Sometimes it's about starting time. And I think that's the one thing that even like Bama sees issues with some players, is that they say, hey, I want to play and I want the money. And they're like, you ain't going to guarantee a spot to play. We may give you a little money, but there's no guarantee, because you've got to compete. And so some players are looking for the opportunity to immediately start, and that's why they go to some of these programs. So you got to keep that in mind. Freakish Corner from Hank. You're right. Big thing here, and I'm gonna let you go, PG, in a second. We got freakish athletes throughout here. Kanik is one. Eric McCarty's coming next year. He's gonna be a monster. PJ Adebawe, that dude reminds me of Javon Curse. And if he's as freakishly athletic as he is coming in, woo, buddy, the defense is gonna be absurd with him at the defensive end spot. I mean, he's a 5-star, because and remember, when we offered him, he wasn't rated at all either. Nobody rated him. He had 0 ratings because he had only played football like a year or two. Kind of like by Joby over there in Norman. Like, they new guys to the game. And then all of a sudden, guess what? They were monsters, and they start shooting up the rankings, and Adebayo is a 5-star now. So we don't know what these non-star guys look like until people actually start seeing them and paying attention to them. Somebody might give them a good rating. PG, what you about to say?
I was going to say something about the bag, and I'll specifically talk about Overton, because it was pretty known with Overton that he was going to get a major bag when he came to Oklahoma.
Right.
Just again, it's hard to compete with the Texas A&M oil money, especially with as big and how many people that they have come in and out of their university. It's like a Big Ten university. It's hard to compete with, just because OU doesn't have that many alumni. And so, with that kind of money down there, and I think it's okay, because I think you're going to end up with Overton eventually. I think we will end up with him eventually. I really do believe that.
I got you.
It's just that's just how it is.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, the only thing I disagree with is I think Oklahoma has a ton of money. They got a ton of people with money. We just got to get them in there to spend. I mean, hell, when there was a report in the end of the 2020 season, OU brought in the most money on the football side than any other school in the country. We outdid Texas. We're the only ones that did like $100 million in rev from boosters and all of that stuff. And we outdid Texas. We outdid Texas A&M. We outdid Alabama that year. So the money's going to be there. It's going to take some time, especially with a new regime. I got one more from my guy, Tom. What up, Tom? Can we win out the season? And does OSU play down and we play up at Bedlam? I'm going to keep it a buck. I have calculated a path for us to make it to the Big 12 championship, but you got to wait for that next week. I have a detailed plan of who needs to lose, but I need this weekend to end first. When we beat Baylor, then my plan will go into place because there's 2 other wins and losses this weekend that I need, and I'm expecting it to happen. I have a calculated way for us to make it to the Big 12 championship after next week. Keep your eyes open for it. Sooner magic, baby. Because guess what? There is a path, and the way that everybody else's schedules look, there's a chance. And I will explain that next week. So with that, I'm going to wrap this bad boy up, put a bow on it. We are about 1 hour and 5 in. Thank you all for tuning in. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you for pulling up. PG, let the people know where to find you. And then Chris, you follow suit, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, y'all can find me on YouTube, Apple, Google, or Spotify. Just the PG Show, all one word. You guys can find me on Twitter, the PG Show _. We've got some new OU player interviews coming up and potentially getting some players from other schools as well. So, yeah, y'all need to just pull up on Friday and see who's coming out.
Hey, definitely do that. PG always has a lot of great content and the interviews for sure. You guys can find us at the Horns Down Pod on Twitter. You can find us at the Horns Down Podcast on YouTube. Find us wherever you get your podcast, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You know the deal. Follow us, like it. Come on.
All of that. And of course, you can find us here on Unfair Sports. I got all the following stuff here on the screen. Thank you all for pulling up as usual. Please hit the like, subscribe button, and share because sharing is caring. And with that, we will chop it up with all of y'all in a few days. Peace.